Mm-hmm. 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 Howdy. Very sorry I'm late, guys. But we're here. There are people in chat. It's a very strange time to be streaming, you'll understand. That's because we're debating a viewer for the first time ever. And they wanted me to start at this very bizarre time. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, I can turn that off. There is a bit of a delay. Yes, I don't know if I can fix that. I haven't upgraded my settings to that point yet. But we will cope, I think. How is everyone? Are there many people here at this ungodly hour? It's actually quite a normal time to be on in the UK. But I guess this is where we find out how many Americans there are in this audience. Yeah, there's a few of you here. Good. Okay. So, God, I've got such a headache today. My God. Oh, give me a second. I haven't even been misbehaving or anything. Just had a very sore-brained weekend. Is your name Craig Cox? No. Nice try. Yeah, in the UK, Mr. Democracy, it's 2:30 in the afternoon, so it's fine. Your average Muslim is... Okay. How's my volume? Volume all good? Okay. Whew. Let's see if we're up to this task then. Probably a good time to do this with a fairly small audience because... Ouch. Okay. He's in the Discord. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Hello. Okay, I'm gonna get a message to him, see if he's feeling prepped. Ralph. Hello?
Hello.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
I think you're cutting out a wee bit. Are you set to push to talk?
Yeah.
Right. Are you on a laptop or a phone?
I'm on a laptop.
Right. So
Just let me get my earphones.
Okay. That was far easier than I expected it to be.
Yeah. I think you'll be able to hear me much better now.
Okay. It's still cutting out occasionally. Are you able to set your audio settings to voice activity? You know how to do that?
Just a sec.
Okay.
Right, so I think you'll be able to hear me much clearer now.
Yeah, there you are. Amazing. Okay, so we spoke a bit in the Discord, very briefly. What exactly is on your mind?
Nothing much. So I thought it'll be a simple discussion on the deplatforming that's happening of conservatives mainly.
Okay. Is this on YouTube in
so
particular, or just in the general social political sphere?
in general, actually, because all these platforms are teaming up together to ban people. Not a good time.
Okay. So, right. Where do I put this? And do you think? Do you have any specific examples of who's been deplatformed that you don't think should have been?
I think all the cases that we are seeing right now of deplatforming on both the left and the right is not justified because it's against the United States law, and the companies that are pushing for deplatforming will end up losing their legal protections provided to them by the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
Okay, which United States law are they violating by deplatforming people?
Yeah, so the thing that we are seeing right now with deplatforming is that when you deplatform someone for any offense that isn't included in the restrictions to free speech according to the United States law, you are effectively a publisher, not a platform. So the difference between a publisher and a platform is that a platform is supposed to allow discussions to happen. They're not supposed to restrict any individuals from speaking what they want to say, because that will be an infringement of their free speech. And a platform in this case, what we are seeing when it comes to social media is that a company or technology that enables communication and distribution of information is a platform, and they are not liable for whatever happens on that platform. Like Alex Jones can say whatever crazy shit he wants, but nobody can sue Twitter or YouTube because of what he said. So when you're a publisher, right now, that's what we are seeing with YouTube and all of the other social media platforms. They do not have that protection from liability. So yeah, if they don't want to lose that protection, they should not censor anyone, regardless of whatever they're saying. And they can deplatform people in certain conditions, like when they threaten the life of the when they're distributing material that they should not be, like child pornography, and when they violate the intellectual property rights of others. And yeah, there was one more case to this. Yeah, and then they are not slandering others. And I think social media platforms should take a back seat and let the courts and the United States law sort these kind of things out. They should not be the arbiters of what is right or wrong.
Okay, so there's a bit of an appeal to the law there, to the United States law about publishers and platforms. I've looked a bit into that. Personally, I'd rather not really make an argument as far as the law goes, because I don't know if you know about the law in the UK, but the law when it comes to free speech in the UK is pretty weird. There's quite a lot you can get away with that I don't maybe think you should, and then there's other things that people get arrested for all the time that I don't think they should be. Like, we've got very strange laws when it comes to offense. I guess you know about the Count Dankula thing. I guess you know about Section 5 of the Public Order Act, where until very recently, people were getting arrested for all kinds of trivial matters, like just because insult was an offense, and that was something that was misused massively by the police. I think there's a big list of them. I think my favorite one, which kind of just summed it all up, was that one person got arrested for calling the police horse gay. There was a whole campaign against that. So yeah, what I'd rather do is go by a moral argument over whether or not, first of all, you said that child pornography and slander, it's okay to deplatform that. Was that right?
Yeah, because the thing is, like, we all know that most of these social media platforms are based in the United States. And basically, the United States controls the internet. So I believe that all these platforms should be following US law. And these kind of weird partnerships that we are seeing with these platforms and local governments should not be taking place, because free speech, according to the US law, has to be upheld in all countries. You can't say that we will enforce this kind of law for like this set of law in this country and this set of law in this country. I don't think that should take place, because the United States exemptions to free speech and the protections given to free speech is like the most liberal type that you can find anywhere. So I think US law should dictate how these companies should perform, because they are in the end based in the US.
Okay, so you like the US law because it conforms to your to the strongest moral position on free speech in these platforms that you think. So you think it's like a moral and legal argument at the same time.
Yes, because the United States is the I'm not an American exceptionalist or anything, but when it comes to personal freedoms and protections given to individuals, I don't think any country can come as close to the United States. And when you look at the history of democracy and enlightenment and these liberal things, US has always been a bastion of these freedoms, even though they in the end supported authoritarian regimes to further their objectives. But I can appreciate the fact that
and even though I don't know, quite a lot of the last 70, 80 years has been very anti-free speech when it came to anyone on the left, for example. And the way they've been with Islam and the way they've been with the Patriot Act. No, I think you can find a few exceptions there. But okay, so the argument I would make is I don't really care what the law is now. Like I would never say that like drug laws, for example, should be followed just because it's the US law. Like I think the laws are very imperfect. And after all, laws are based on morality, not the other way around. So my moral claim would be that when it comes to free speech, you've already kind of conceded this on a very broad level. But in order to allow free speech to fully flourish, there's no such thing as absolute free speech, because some forms of free speech will curtail the free speech rights of others. I mean, do you know the whole argument with absolute freedom? Like, we've got the freedom to drive mostly in the world, but if you start adding freedoms to that, like if you take away restrictions on when you should stop and start with traffic lights, or if you get rid of speed limits, and if you get rid of points for traffic violations, then driving would be very dangerous. People could just drive on whatever side of the road they liked. And what you would inevitably do is you would end up limiting freedom to drive because people would be afraid for their lives. Do you get that position?
Yeah, I understand that.
So do you think it's the same with speech, in a sense that if some people, obviously, if YouTube were just allowed to disseminate child pornography, and if they were allowed to slander people, and if they were allowed to do things that make it difficult for other people to speak, then that would be an imperfect scenario for free speech?
I think the restrictions to free speech come according to John Stuart Mill's harm principle. Like, if you're inciting violence on others and etc., then yeah, you can be deplatformed according to the United States law, and it also is against the moral justification for free speech.
I agree, John Stuart Mill, absolutely. I completely agree. So in that case, I wonder what a lot of the people who have been deplatformed for, I wonder exactly why you think what they've done wasn't harmful. I mean, I don't think I would back up YouTube on every decision they've made. They definitely seem to be doing a better job than most when it comes to deplatforming, because the people they've deplatformed have been harmful. You said slander, actually, which would make me wonder why they haven't taken Steven Crowder off, because he has openly engaged in slander, and he has curtailed the free speech rights of others, quite arguably, by doing so.
Yeah, the thing with when you're slandering someone, it's not the job of the platform to decide like who's in the right or who's in the wrong. We have courts for that. So like, if Steven Crowder has slandered someone, they can go to court and they can win a case and get him taken off YouTube or whatever platform he was using through the legal system. And all I'm against is that companies becoming the judge in the sense, you understand, right?
Yeah, again, I don't think companies doing this is a perfect scenario. The same way that I think governments. I don't think governments are perfect for this either. Actually, I don't want governments having control over what people say. That's the precedent that sets is obvious. We've seen what's happened in the past with governments taking control over just for completely political purposes, like censoring the left and censoring Muslims. They still do that now. So. I asked for taking it to court. Well, what if there's first of all, court's expensive in a lot of countries. What if people are slandering an entire group? For example, if they are right. So, do you know what stochastic terrorism is?
Not exactly. I'm not familiar with that.
So I'll give you a very specific example in history. Reverend Ian Paisley, the Northern Irish Protestant leader, I think he founded the DUP. He was part of the pro-unionist anti-republican. So in Ireland, they're the Republicans who want to break off from the UK. They're the unionists who want to stay. Paisley was a unionist, and he, in his entire career, never once incited violence. Like, no one's been able to find anything of him inciting violence against Irish Republicans. What he did do was he would always give very inflammatory and very colorful speeches, often in the style of the Old Testament, where he would say that never will Ireland be free without unless we remove the scourge of republicanism, and when we finally do cut out this disease, then the barren fields of Ulster will be restored like rain from the manna from heaven. So, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of terrorist wings of the Irish Unionist movement start appearing. But because he's never inciting violence, he gets to scratch his head and so, well, nothing to do with me, But obviously, what we know now from lots of political science and sociological study is that people can cause great harm without directly inciting any violence and without directly slandering anyone. And that's a judgment that someone has to bring around. Someone has to draw that line. And I think people who have been deplatformed, many of them have crossed that line.
I wouldn't agree with that because, it's really hard to know what, differentiate between active incitement and passive incitement, which is what you described right now.
Mm.
And I don't think any of the people who were deplatformed called for violence in any case. And the funny thing about Twitter is that they have actually protected people who actively called for violence. Like in the case of the Covington kids, there were many high-profile Twitter accounts calling for their death, throwing them into a sawmill or something like that. And Twitter did not take action on any of them. And then there was this tweet by there's this right-wing journalist, Chuck Johnson. He was actually preparing a dossier to take down a Black Lives Matter activist. And the tweet was, "I'm asking for donations to take down this individual." And Twitter outright banned him. But anyone with common sense can understand that it was not any kind of incitement. He was preparing a dossier to take that guy out. And so we can see that when it comes to platforms, tech and academia is usually left-leaning. And it's not a secret or anything. Like, most of these platforms are situated in the most liberal, most left-leaning states in the United States.
Okay, but can I cut you off there? First of all, I wouldn't really. Again, I hate this comparison of centrist liberal with left wing. Like, corporations are not left wing. They don't give a fuck about left wing people. They're inclusive. That's what they are. They're very inclusive, and you could argue to a very slight degree that they're intersectional. There's a very obvious reason for that, is because they want to make the platform comfortable for everyone. And the left, incidentally, we just don't have much of a tendency to ruin people's lives just to exist on a platform. Like, the right will target minority groups in numerous different ways, even if they're not doing it directly. Is if you look at some very like vague, shitty like video on asylum seekers or illegal immigration, the comments will just be filled with "get them all out," "exterminate them," all this shit. So yeah, that's. I mean, that's. I wouldn't say that's because YouTube has a left-leaning bias. It's because it just so happens that if you want to make a platform comfortable for everyone, then the right are the ones who have to be the first to go because they're the ones who make platforms difficult for people.
Yeah, not exactly, because none of them are calling for an open genocide of these asylum seekers or anything.
Wait, do you not think you can? Do you not think you can cause harm without calling for genocide? I mean, like we see this with again with stochastic terrorism. Is people will very vaguely gesture to use when it comes to their dislike for asylum seekers and for foreigners, and then those people with their very carefully chosen words will appear in the manifestos of terrorists, like the terrorists in the UK who drove a van into a bunch of Muslims. It was no surprise to anyone that he had spent the last month watching Tommy Robinson videos, because Tommy Robinson won't incite violence. What he will say is, any Muslims, you will feel the full force of the EDL. And full force, well, that could mean anything. Full force could mean sending strongly worded letters. So, what?
Like, see, no, listen, Tommy Robinson is a different case. I've seen him defend a lot of normal Muslims. Like, listen, here's the thing. In the UK, you have these extremely conservative Muslims adhere to the Wahhabist ideology of Islam, and they are actually doing a lot of harm to society, and nobody's talking about it. So when the center left and the center right,
I think quite a lot of people are talking about Wahhabist people spread. I think that gets spoken about quite a lot. But go on.
The mosques and madrasas, like these Islamic schools where they teach Quran to these young children in the UK, they were actually completely funded by Saudi Arabia and fully infested with these Wahhabists. And the UK government had to get involved and get them out and replace them with these Sufi the Sufi, I don't know what you call them. It's like Islamic spiritualist movement. They are very peaceful people. So they had to replace the whole, madrasas with these kind of preachers. So when it comes to Tommy Robinson, the guy literally just talks about problems in small rural towns like Luton, etc., where these Islamists are using drugs, alcohol, etc.
Yeah, no, he lies about studies. He lies about statistics. He uses insanely inflammatory. He says things like, he will say Islam has been at war with us for 1400 years. He will talk about how he will continuously lie about threats to his life. He's made up things about like Antifa Dundee bringing AK-47s across the English border to come and assassinate him. The cops said, no, none of that's true. And he makes people life miserable for any Muslim who wants to come on YouTube. When Tommy Robinson is a huge figure on there, they understandably would not want to do so because his fans are insanely abusive. They do not know the difference between a normal Muslim and a terrorist, because after the Rotherham scandal, his followers went into Rotherham and just started assaulting Muslims indiscriminately. One Muslim died because two Tommy Robinson fans thought he was a groomer after the groomers were in jail. So it's absolutely, fuck it, yeah, get him off YouTube, because it's either Tommy Robinson's free speech or it's the free speech of Muslims, like Muslims who are not Wahhabists, because Tommy Robinson's fans, maybe he knows the difference. He speaks in a way that his followers would not.
I think the issue here is that the state has lost its monopoly on the legitimate use of force and is not able to enforce laws. And you have places like these ghettos in Europe, and these are everywhere, like in France, Sweden, etc., where police are not.
Okay, yeah, Pivot, you're jumping off the point though. We're not talking about. Okay, we can have it. We can have a discussion about.
Far right and the far left.
Hang on, you disconnected. Hang on. Listen, we're not talking about whether or not Islam is a threat to Europe. Okay, that's a massive pivot. We're talking about free speech rights. Okay.
The issue here is that the state is not able to enforce law, and it's not able to protect its citizens, both the white people and the Muslims. So I completely disavow any kind of attacks against Muslims as a community, and I completely disavow the Islamists who have been spreading hate in the name of Islam, which
I agree.
is a lot of
So you disavow the violence? Then why don't you disavow the rhetoric of someone who is directly linked to that violence? Every organization Tommy Robinson has joined, every group, almost every rally he's spoken at has ended up with people going out and like hurting people. Like this, there's a direct link between that speech and violence.
I wouldn't call the people, I think there is blame on both sides of the issue. There are Muslim gangs who are targeting peaceful protesters, like with, these Tommy Robinson type. Anyone who's right to the center is a target for these people. And there are elements of the far right targeting innocent Muslims who have nothing to do with this. It's a cycle of violence, actually. So
again, separate discussion though. I'm asking about free speech. So again, I think you would agree that Muslim hate. Do you think so? Obviously, do you think Muslim hate preachers should be allowed on YouTube? ISIS recruitment people. I mean, they don't always incite violence. By the way, they're just as cunning as far right hate preachers. So
the problem with censoring Islamic preachers is that ISIS also uses the same Quran, and these normal conservative Islamic preachers also use the same Quran, and each verse in the Quran can be used. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the Quran that you cannot find in the Bible or the Torah when it comes to inciting violence against non-believers. And I'm saying this as someone who has studied the Quran, the Hadith, and the Seerah of Muhammad, that the Islamic terrorism that we are seeing right now in Europe and all over the world is a result of people actually reading the Quran in its full context.
Again, you're off the point. I'm asking if you think. Excuse me. I'm asking if you think ISIS recruitment videos and Islamic hate preaching should be allowed on YouTube.
Yeah, Islamic hate preaching always involves call for violence against the non-believer, the kuffar.
It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. They can talk about the promised land. They can talk about the old school Muslim family. They can talk about quite a lot without calling for violence, and they do. That's how they survive on several corners of the internet. They are just as evasive as right-wing hate preachers. They'll talk about Western architecture and how horrible it is, and then if you look at a lot of Islamic hate preaching, which unfortunately I've like been a bit curious in the past, and then academic purposes, by the way, and it's almost identical. Like the way they talk about modernity is almost identical to the way Paul Joseph Watson talks about modernity. There's a lot of overlap here, and I agree. I think Muslims who are doing that, like hate preachers, who even if they're not inciting for violence, the connection is pretty clear. If you can see if you can see demonstrably that their followers are getting radicalized and being in a position where they want to either harass or target or hurt people, then yeah, that hate preacher, it doesn't matter if they haven't called for violence, they should go as well.
Bring the hate preachers to the right wing, the whole right wing is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion, because these hate preachers have a set ideology, they have a set of beliefs. The right is completely scattered all over the spectrum, and you won't find two groups agreeing with each other on everything.
Yeah, Islamic hate preaching is quite scattered as well. Like, I mean, like there's lots of conflicting networks. The biggest killer and victim of Muslim extremists is other Muslims. So
yeah, because the other Muslims are considered hypocrites according to Islam, because there is this thing called
once again, my friend, we're off the point. I'm sorry, we're just off that. Like, I would have loved to do more research on Muslim hate preaching, but the point is, I'm asked. So let's put it this way. I'm gonna again, since the discussion was deplatforming free speech. I
don't think anyone who is not actively calling for violence should be deplatformed, regardless of where they are.
Okay.
Like, I can teach the Quran and talk about how modern art and stuff is really bad, but
so what about harassment? So when Steven Crowder was calling Carlos Maza a lispy little queer, and then that directly linked to harassment, then
that's a good case actually. I'm glad that you brought that up, because Carlos Maza identifies as a queer or whatever that is. I don't understand this intersectional stuff, and I don't not actually had to deal with these kind of things in my real life, so I don't know much about it. So Steven Crowder has actually responded to like almost all the videos that Carlos Massa has done for Vox, and in all of them, they were only able to find 2 minutes of like more than 14 hours of footage, and they were only able to find 2 minutes of clips where he's like mocking Carlos Massa for being queer or something like that.
Doesn't matter.
Often, yeah, it actually does matter, because offense is not something that's given, it's something that's taken. And in 14 to 20 hours of footage, I don't know exactly how many there are, but it's above 14 hours for sure. And you can only find 2 minutes where Steven Crowder makes a couple of jokes about someone, and you want him deplatformed. Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch. And
yeah, and we know where those 2 minutes led. They led to Carlos Massa getting thousands and thousands of hateful messages and stuff that you can't really like. Do you know how difficult it is when you're trying to like be on a platform and you've got that kind of shit going on in the background? Like that restricted the free speech of Carlos Massa. That put him under stress. That put him that he was threatened. He was doxxed. Yeah, that's absolutely it only takes 2 minutes to do that, because I'm sorry, on the internet, 2 minutes of footage, if it's the right 2 minutes, goes viral, and it did. So.
Actually, Carlos Massa was the one who was, going around sharing that footage and calling and getting Steven Crowder deplatformed. I mean, not deplatformed, demonetized in that sense.
After the fact, after he was being doxxed and attacked by Crowder fans.
Played very well, I must say. I can appreciate his genius in that sense, because it was Pride Month and YouTube, and he was able to make this an LGBT issue instead of just a him issue.
Well, it is an LGBT issue because Crowder is homophobic all the time. He's so homophobic that, and rumors are, which are almost definitely true, is whenever he takes a trans person onto his show, he has to reassure them that he doesn't actually believe the things he says about trans people. But it doesn't matter. Consequentially, what he does in his channel is massively homophobic. He's homophobic, he's transphobic, he's been racist against Chinese people with the fucking teeth. He's made fun of children in concentration camps in the American border. He has done all kinds of shit that is completely
tough to unpack out there. But I don't think Steven Crowder did anything wrong, because, as I said, speech is subjective and offense is taken. You don't give offense to someone. And
I agree, speech is subjective, which is why it's not about offense here. This is about the reaction of the fans. It might be Steven Crowder might not have meant any harm by constantly harassing Carlos Massa and calling him a lesbian or queer.
Conservatives actually tell their fans to behave in a proper way, and I don't think any conservative will go like behind this person like Carlos Massa and harass him in that sense. I find that hard to believe, because
well, they did. Thousands of fans did.
I don't believe Massa on this, because
you don't believe him. He showed evidence, didn't he? Crowder didn't deny it.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, Crowder does not call for harassment or anything. Crowder does his own thing. He debunks whatever Carlos Massa says in his show, The Intercept.
Or he tries to. Yeah. Look again. Okay, free speech argument. I'm just trying to keep you on the point. Let's see. Do you think? Okay, can I ask you a separate question? I'm sorry, because again, like every case we bring up is just getting. You seem to disagree with some of the details. Can I ask you? Do you think the same thing with speech should be applied in general law? Like you're not breaking the law unless you're openly inciting violence, or do you think that's generally the case?
That is generally the case, because according to the First Amendment, free speech is the most important thing that is needed in a civil society.
True. I'll give you one example. Let's see. I know the exact law in Scotland. I think it's almost definitely something similar in the US. So stalking, right? Stalking is a law that, at least in Scotland, there's no working legal definition, which means it's quite open. But one thing about that law is stalking and harassment it's something you can do just by using words. If you say the words hello in a text message and you send that message over 100 times a day to an ex-girlfriend or something like that, that becomes stalking, right? So that's a crime.
Harassment. Yeah, but that's not included in the free speech, this thing, because free speech is about expressing your beliefs and ideas.
You can express your beliefs and ideas. You can say, I'm going to win you back one day or something like that. Yeah, you can. But so you think...
Free speech. It's a thing between a to individuals. I don't think that comes under free speech in any way.
It does kind of concern free speech, because it means whoever's the victim can't really check their phone and talk to other people, and of course the stress it puts people under, because harassment is stressful. So yeah, it does actually affect free speech, and that's why I don't know. I've been on YouTube for like 4 months. Do you know how many, after I did that video on Muslim grooming gangs, and then the one on Africa afterwards, the amount of messages I got from people like Muslims and black people who were considering making YouTube channels, but they just were so put off by the fact that everyone who is black or Muslim who makes left-wing content on YouTube will get harassed. They'll get ratioed, and they'll get people in their DMs, emails, all that, attempted doxing. So yeah, that's there's a judgment to be made there. And I think this is every platform that people like Fuentes and Stefan Molyneux and Sargon and all that are let to run free on. Those platforms are fucking horrible for anyone who's gay or LGBT or black or Muslim. So there's a decision that has to be made there. Is you're either making free speech okay for fascists, or you're making it okay for people who are not fascists. And I would like to choose not fascists getting the right to speak rather than fascists.
First of all, when it comes to these minority people who are getting harassed, all I can say is that want to survive in an environment like this, you have to grow thicker skin. And there is something called the block button, which I'm sure everyone can use, or they can close their DMs completely.
No, not really. If they find your phone number, no. And the fact that you know it's happening also has an effect. I'm sorry, no. Like what? Just look away. Just look away from the screen. No, not on the internet. No, they can find you on other platforms. You can just know that it's happening. And again, why should gay and trans and black people and Muslims have to grow thicker skin when fascists don't have to? That's an imbalance already.
First of all, you're assuming that conservatives also don't get these kind of harassments. Like a centrist, like Tim Pool, for example, he gets death threats on Twitter, and Twitter does not do anything about it. And these people who are getting harassed,
I think they should. They should. If Tim Pool's getting death threats, he should. Again, it's not really quite the same power relation as attacking protected minorities. Tim Pool is not a protected class. Tim Pool tends to get criticized because he's cataclysmically stupid, not because he's of who he is.
Because, like, what about a person who is half black and half white? Is he like in the middle of the victim hierarchy or something? Okay, first of all,
typically, yeah, because if you are half black, then a racist wouldn't know the difference, but they wouldn't treat you differently. But again, getting to the point is,
and there are like many combinations that I can go through, and this intersectionality doesn't make any sense, and a lot of people have debunked it. Like,
well, at least you admit that it doesn't make any sense to you. If you don't understand it, then you don't need to. This isn't the argument. If the argument is, again, just look away from the screen, well, not exactly, because again, we're talking about consequences of this kind of speech. So when we talk about the consequences of great replacement theory, which is cited in just about, to some degree, in just about every far-right terrorist manifesto there is, then I don't know if the victims of Christchurch could have just looked away from the screen. There are real-world consequences to this kind of propaganda. If you follow these arguments that people like Crowder and all them make to their logical conclusion, the logical conclusion is violence. They just don't say it because they're cowards.
So can I just make a point? See, first of all, deplatforming controversial individuals is what leads to these kind of violence. Because once these people see that they have no way of advancing themselves in the system, then they resort to other means. For example, you know the case of Nick Griffin of the BNP?
I know a few of his cases, yeah.
Actually, the thing is, he was allowed to have a platform on BBC, Question Hour or something. And there were a lot of people who were calling him to get deplatformed. But his appearance on the BBC actually led to the BNP's downfall in a way. So when you actually engage with these kind of trolls and expose them for the racists or fascists they actually lose support in the eyes of the public. When you take these people out of platforms and let them go underground, like we are seeing with all these kind of people like Stefan Molyneux and a lot of conservative commentators, not conservatives exactly, but still, right-wing commentators, they actually go underground completely, build their own social media platforms, build their own payment processing services, because PayPal and MasterCard won't allow them to get any sort of donations from there.
So do you think they're more dangerous when they're underground?
No, the thing is, once they go underground, you have no control over these kind of people, and there is no way that you can de-radicalize them. What we need is the left and the right talking to each other more, and instead of like banning people you disagree with, that'll only exacerbate the problem.
Okay, don't say, okay, I hate that this language is so stupid. That banning people you disagree with, the fact that we disagree with them is not the operating factor here. I disagree with a lot of people on YouTube. Most of the people I disagree with should say it's not because I disagree with them. It's because they're disseminating propaganda and misinformation and just a combination of rhetoric that leads to harm. Sorry?
You can actually counter these propaganda and misinformation with better arguments. For example,
not always. No, I'm sorry. No, conservatives and far-right fascists do not care about facts. They do not give a fuck about facts. I mean,
but listen, these people don't care about facts, but normal people like me, who are not far right, who are not far left, actually care about the facts. And your video on Fuentes and his African wheel thing, which I really enjoyed and I really liked, and it actually taught me a lot of new stuff, like the Ethiopian philosopher Zera Yacob. And that kind of stuff actually appeals to the normal person. And these far-right fringes, you cannot change their mind so easily, and their mind won't be changed.
Yeah.
But normal people actually listen to both sides, and they want to listen to both sides. So when we have dialogue, and when we have the left debunking the myths of the right, and when we have the right debunking the false narratives of the left, we reach closer to the truth. That is what we need to strive for. It's not like a partisan thing, like my team will always win and your team is always wrong, like that. What we want is a country that is unified. What we want is people to come together in the marketplace of ideas. And like censoring these people like Stefan Molyneux, I don't know what that guy was doing, like tweeting about eggs or women's eggs or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, Stefan Molyneux he had an insanely toxic community. I think there's quite like reasonable evidence to suggest that he had a bit of a cult going on where people were getting doxxed if they left and all kinds of shit. But yeah, again, Stefan Molyneux, absolutely, because he was supporting the fascist regime in Poland. He's constantly lied about genocide and things like that. He's touted great replacement theory and racial inferiority to the bitter end. Again, saying just about everything you can say without actually saying there should be violence, to which the followers will not know the difference.
When it comes to Poland, I think the Polish government actually represents what the people want. They don't want mass immigration. They don't want
I don't care about the Polish government. The point is,
you just brought that up. You just called the Polish government fascist in a way, and not fascist. They are normal people, normal populists representing the people.
Well, you can be fascist with a popular mandate.
Doesn't work that way, actually.
It does. You can get democratically elected and then become a fascist. There's one or two case examples of that happening, but
not exactly, because the Polish government is a democratically elected government.
You can still be democratically elected and still be a fascist. Again,
you guys, a fascist is a label that you guys give to people who are right of center and who disagree with you when it comes to things.
Not like, really. British Conservative Party is right of centre. They're not fascist.
Actually, that is what is happening right now. You don't like the Polish government. You disagree with their policies, and you are now calling them fascist. It's a classical tactic that you guys use.
I mean, no, they've done quite a lot of very aggressive anti-LGBT policies. I haven't looked into it recently, but yeah, they're pretty. I'm sorry.
Conservative government based on Catholic values, and you cannot expect them to
Catholic
follow your set of. They're real conservatives. They want to preserve the Christian morality, and they have that attachment to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and they also they're effectively an ethno state. Yeah, fascist. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all countries.
That's okay if you like that. If you like that, that's okay. But yeah, they're a fascist state.
Yeah, I don't have any problem, because what happens in Poland doesn't have anything to do with me. And practically all countries are ethno states to a certain degree. Like France is for the French, UK is for the the Irish, the Welsh, the Scottish, and the British, and Germany is for the Germans. all countries other than the United States are ethno-states in a sense.
Right, I strongly disagree. Let's go back to talking about free speech.
The majority of the population belongs to the same ethnic group.
Wait, so you don't?
Speak the same.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're not. Okay, I don't need to. I don't need to try and convince you about problems with ethnostate. What if you're talking about free speech? So you don't think? So you think unless you're inciting for violence, there's no way that you can disseminate propaganda and disinformation that causes harm, right?
The exceptions to free speech, according to the United States law.
I don't need to know about the United States law. I want to know your moral position. Is your moral position just happen to?
My moral position is based on the United States law, because that is also based on the morality of the time. So child pornography, fraud, intellectual property violations, threatening harm, and threatening the president. These are things what should not be included in free speech.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about if someone stands outside a cafe with a loudhailer megaphone and just talks about how, just starts rambling about how the end is nigh? Is that okay?
Can you repeat that? I did not catch it.
If someone goes into a cafe with a megaphone and starts rambling about Jewish question, no calls for violence, no slander.
No, actually, because a cafe is not a public place, and free
cafe is a pretty public space.
Right? No, the cafe owner can decide who they want to let in and who they want to kick out. So there is no question about that, like right over there.
Yeah, but why? Why do they? I mean, why do they? Not, I don't care. Like just because it's theirs. Yeah, with private property rights. But why? Why does the cafe make that decision?
The cafe is the private property of whoever owns it.
No, so yeah, it's their private property, but they don't have to kick the person out. Why do they kick them out? Why should they?
Yeah, because it's morally wrong and anti-Semitic.
Okay. Why is that? Why should they kick them out for saying something that's anti-Semitic? Or even, it doesn't matter. Say if they're just talking about their day with a megaphone, harmless. They're just saying how their day went with a megaphone in the middle of a cafe.
Yeah, if it's disturbing people, then I think the cafe owner can kick them out.
They can?
Yeah, because in the end, the cafe owner is the one who decides who should stay inside his property and who should go out.
Yeah, and their moral precedent for using that power is that the existence of that person in the cafe is making the presence of other people in the cafe difficult or unpleasant, right?
Exactly. The person speaking about his day and disturbing others is harmful to business, and the cafe owner might be annoyed by that, so he can kick them out. So in the end, it doesn't matter why he chooses to kick them out. He can kick them out. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not a bit bothered about, because YouTube can kick people off for making the platform unpleasant for other people.
No, because YouTube is a platform and they get legal protection from the United States law that they won't be held accountable to what people say.
Again, that's your legal argument, but we're talking morally. So morally, it's okay to kick the person out of the cafe because they're making the experience difficult, unnecessarily difficult for everyone else. That's the argument I would use for YouTube.
Cafe is private property. YouTube is like a public park, because
do you think the people in the cafe just need to grow thicker skin?
YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter have monopolized internet discourse. So they are actually supposed to be treated like a public space. So they cannot kick people out. So I should be able to go and rant about the Jewish question, say whatever I want, and still not get kicked out.
Again, you're appealing to the law, though. But you think it's not just because it's legal. You also think it's because, I mean, I don't know why you don't just say it morally, because appealing to the law is quite weak to most people, I think, just so you know. So because the laws are not perfect. Laws are made with all kinds of political motivations behind them. So you think it should be okay because it doesn't, you think it doesn't, someone disseminating the Jewish question all over YouTube, or someone disseminating Muslim propaganda, which is, again, not directly inciting violence, but is very inflammatory, for example, say the infidel question, then So you don't, but you think that's okay because it doesn't harm people to a sufficient degree that in comparison to the people in the cafe?
No, because the cafe and there is no there is no comparison between the two, because a cafe is a private place of business and the owner can choose to kick out anyone for whatever reason he wants. But YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. are not private what do you call platforms. They are public spaces where everyone should be able to speak. Even the president of the United States, even like all the world leaders use Twitter.
Well, the thing is, not everyone was able to on YouTube. People were not equally able to speak on YouTube 4 or 5 years ago. If you were, I don't know if you were around on YouTube in 2016, but if you were an LGBT activist or like a whatever, like a non-binary YouTuber just talking about your experience as a non-binary, you were completely dogpiled. If you were a feminist, you were dogpiled. You were ratioed. You were harassed. You had massive YouTubers would like deliberately make videos about you so that their fans could go in and effectively scare you off, and a lot of them did get scared off. So it's not, there's a choice to be made here again. People like Sargon of Akkad, Stefan Molyneux, Nick Fuentes made YouTube an environment where not everyone could speak.
The only people Nick Fuentes harasses are other like mainstream conservatives like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and Dan Crenshaw. And I think those clips that comes out of the Groy War are really funny. But back to the...
Well, his fans would also, because of his again, not directly targeting, maybe he doesn't directly target African Americans or gays or gay YouTubers and all that, but he definitely attacks the degenerate as a whole. So that does lead to his fans attacking them. Like Nick Fuentes never directly attacked me, but his fans did. You know, it's fine. It's not a big deal. He's off YouTube. It's good.
For what his fans do anyway.
Sorry?
When it comes to things like, he cannot be held responsible for whatever his fans do. Like he has a lot.
Yes,
of fans,
you can.
like
You can absolutely be held responsible for what your fans broadly do. Like I've got quite like you're not gonna. There's a reason you'll never see my fans like doing what Fuentes fans does. Your rhetoric of course. Like what's the point? What's the point in being a public figure if you're not trying to influence people? Fuentes knows he can influence his fans, and he does.
Yeah, and his fans are mainly 16-year-old children,
which is worse. Exactly. Block. Yeah, if you're going to go onto YouTube and disseminate propaganda and hurtful rhetoric to a group of incredibly suggestible bedwetters, then yeah, that's even worse.
Doesn't the fact that you debunk his propaganda stop him from getting more followers in a way?
His followers his followers don't give a shit about his propaganda. Nick Fuentes can be wrong about absolutely everything about it. Wait, what?
His current followers don't give a shit, but normal people do. And when it comes to Stefan Molyneux, is one of the biggest snake oil salesmen that I've ever seen. And when he starts talking about philosophy, my ears start to bleed, and any normal philosophy student can debunk most of his nonsense, but nobody does it in a proper way. And I think the thing is, when you have these kind of people, you have to fight them in the battleground of ideas. And I don't think deplatforming them is any solution, because practically speaking, when you kick these people out, they come back stronger because they create their own echo chambers, you know.
No, there's no evidence for that. No, when you kick people out of the you're empirically you're empirically wrong. When you again, good case study difference, 1930s Britain. The British public, or rather, not the British system, but the British public was much more aggressive towards Nazi propaganda than the Germans were. The people who tried to disseminate propaganda in the UK were constantly attacked by anti-fascists and people who would disconnect their speakers and they would just shout over their rallies. It was just like, it was not a free speech absolutist environment at all. Germany, for example, the fascists enjoyed massive free speech protections and they were allowed to spread. Nick Fuentes and Sargon and Stefan are not... Why are they complaining about coming off YouTube it's making them stronger. They know it's not making them stronger. They know that how impotent they are on DLive and on Parler and BitChute. Like they know that that ruins their movement effectively. Richard Spencer, like what the fuck is that? Like like right wingers basically saying like, don't take us off YouTube. That will make us stronger. Take the advice from me, the person who is your enemy.
The thing is, when you ban people like Molyneux and Fuentes, who have a cult-like following, they go to their own different platforms like DLive and places like censored.tv. They create their own parallel economies. And you cannot actually de-radicalize their audience once you lose them, you know.
Well, you can, because they still visit YouTube, and again, they also, you can also, it definitely challenges them in a way that normal people like you, like I don't know how many normal people venture off into BitChute or DLive and start watching Fuentes without having been on YouTube first. So no, it does not make them stronger. They know it does. That's why they complain. That's why they make fucking like 10-minute coping molding videos every time they get taken off a platform. It's because it is detrimental to them.
It is detrimental to them in the short run, but it does not affect their vein in the.
Do you have any evidence for this? Do you have any evidence of like fascist movements being pushed underground and then just magically appearing 20 years later stronger than ever? Like fucking Star Wars?
Listen, do you know how long the alt-right, the neo-Confederates, the neo-Nazis, etc. have been surviving?
Yeah, I mean, I was in first contact with them in like 2006. Yeah.
When you allow them on public spaces, like we saw with Nick Griffin on BBC, people actually see them for the idiots they are. That will stop other people from joining their movement.
Nick Griffin is a very exceptional case, because Nick Griffin is Nick Griffin is profoundly uncharismatic. He is insanely stupid. He looks weird. He was inexperienced. He was like, his problem was that he was honest. He was very honest about his view on LGBT people and on Muslims and immigrants, in a way that what if you just had someone who was a bit more sophisticated than Nick Griffin, say Nigel Farage, who were able to hide their love for fascist philosophy and were able to just at least pretend to care about refugees and foreigners, and then they can achieve the same effect.
The whole thing, world does not operate on this kind of, your type of morality. Realpolitik is completely different. And these refugees coming into the UK, people don't want them there. That's why you see these kind of people. Like,
we're talking about free speech. We're not. I don't care what. I know most people in Britain.
No, you're slandering them as fascists and using that as a base to get these people removed.
I don't think everyone's fascist. I just think these people. I don't think everyone who's on the right is fascist. I just think, yeah, these people. The arguments that Nick Griffin and Farage made, because Nick Griffin was a fascist. He openly declared his love for Oswald Mosley. The BNP, their origins can be traced back to the British Union of Fascists. Like, everyone knows Nick Griffin's a fascist. Nick Griffin knows he's a fascist. The thing with Farage is the arguments that he used against Muslims and against immigrants and against refugees were exactly the same. He appealed to the fact, he appealed to fake stats on crime. He appealed to cheap labor, again, very little evidence. And he appealed to the fact that the idea that they were diseased with the HIV thing. These are all the same arguments that fascists use. He's just been a bit more sophisticated with it.
Arguments and make better arguments. Like,
but I'm not going to appear on the BBC 40 times in the last 5 years like Farage did, and I don't have the. And again, talking about the media, do you know how fucking racist the British right-wing media is? What?
The problem with British media and media in general is that they operate on views and ratings. So you cannot expect them to give you enough time to say your views. You have to like meet them in debate areas, like in Oxford Union, etc.
Well, no, you don't have to meet them in debates. Because why do you have to meet them in debates? You can if you want, but why do you have to?
You cannot control media, because media agencies are publishers, and they get to decide what they want to put out.
Debating isn't about being right. Like, debating is about it helps, but debating is about posturing. It's a performance. But again, we're slightly off the free speech argument. I don't even remember where we were at last. Again, so okay. Do you think then that YouTube would be better if the only people they got rid of were the child pornographers and the slanderers and the fucking and people who directly incite violence, right? YouTube would be
I think
YouTube would be a richer exchange of ideas, right?
I think YouTube would be much better if they stopped suppressing small channels, if they got rid of these child pornographers, if they got rid of neo-Nazis who call for violence and other kind of, undesirables who are breaking the law. Would
Okay.
make YouTube much better. And yeah, and I'd really like them to stop pushing larger channels.
Right. Okay. So can you explain then why every platform that adheres to the standards that you do, like 4chan, Parler, all these free speech, BitChute, DLive, they're all shitholes, and they're all adhering to the liberal standard of free speech that you do.
People who would use them are people who don't get kicked out of these platforms. Like, for example, let's take the example of 4chan. Anyone who gets banned on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the first place they go to is 4chan, because that is the only place where they can say whatever they want to say without having to fear anything, and the anonymity plays into it a bit. So
well, none of those websites started off that way. They became that way because of their terms.
Yeah, it became that way because most normal people started using other platforms, and these far-right crazies were the only ones left behind. So deplatforming people leads to 4chans and 8chans and parlors being created.
Well, not quite, because YouTube was kind of like that in 2016. It wasn't far off.
Yeah, but you cannot do anything about that. People are people. You cannot control their thoughts and this thing,
I know you can't control their thoughts, but if they're committing actions and using rhetoric that is demonstrably linked to violence, then yeah, you can. The people like far-right terrorists, they cite their sources, and there's a lot of overlap. They tell you who radicalized them.
Yeah, their sources are mostly Stormfront and Atomwaffen's website, etc.
Not quite. Listen, if you look at like
these kind of far-right terrorists are really common, and with the current state of things, with the FBI and everyone infiltrating these groups, they really don't have much power. The only thing that you can find are these lone wolves who are radicalized by themselves, and these are people who need help. They don't have real social connections and stuff like that.
Well, that's how stochastic terrorism works. It increases the spreading of a narrative, say like Great Replacement theory, which a theory which
it's not a conspiracy or something like.
It is a conspiracy. The Great Replacement theory is the idea that it's being organized by Jewish people.
Yeah, the thing with the Great Replacement theory is that media has reported on this. It's called the Browning of America or something, where like Obama was saying during the Obama administration, the Democrats were saying that they will have this broad coalition of these oppressed intersectional categories and stuff like that, and they will be able to win elections when these people are the majority or something like that. And based on that, the white replacement theory started. Yeah, and then there was this, I don't know, it was a study done by some German social scientist or something, where he planned to import a lot of African Berbers into Germany so that the
I'm sorry. Like again, I'd rather you didn't without me sourcing things. Great Replacement, it is a conspiracy theory. The evidence for it is completely bunk. It's a complete like philosophical it's a completely hello. It's a completely basic fallacy of people projecting current trends off into the future. And the only logical conclusion of Great Replacement theory is to kill people. The only thing is that the theorists don't go that way because they want to publish themselves, but it's only a matter of time before people who adhere to that will take matters into their own hands.
Personally, I don't think people who talk about the Great Replacement theory should be deplatformed, because first of all, the Great Replacement theory that the far right is talking about, there are like Jews controlling these immigration laws and stuff like that. I don't believe any of that, but I think that like what we are seeing in Europe and North America, for example, with the low birth rates and the mass immigration from different parts of the world, yeah, like white people will be a minority. It's not a conspiracy theory. Even mainstream media has reported on this years ago.
They've been predicting this. They've been predicting this for decades. And again, if white people become a minority just because brown people are having more babies, why is that bad? And again, the presupposition that it's bad is why great replacement theory is dangerous, and that's why, again, like if you look at the manifestos of, say, the Christchurch shooter and Breivik and all that, it's not even just the great replacement theory; it's all of the same talking points that come from the same channels. It's the glorification of Slavic nationalism. It's the Muslim grooming gangs. It's the exact same case studies about crime in Germany and Scandinavia. It's all the same stories that come from the same people. So I'm sorry, like I feel like you're just kind of denying the fact here that the increased.
No, I'm denying the facts. I'm saying that like Canada has a plan to increase its population to 100 million by the year 2100, and they want to do this because they want to be a stronger economic power and like that. So they will be taking in a lot of immigrants. So the far right is basing it on true premises and false conclusions. Like there are no Jews behind this whole thing. Like America and Europe suffer from its own success. You find like, family formation, etc. is really hard. So yeah, white people are not having any babies, and these immigrants that come in, they come in with their whole family.
I'm sorry, like it's an interesting discussion, but you're kind of away from the point again. The point is that I don't know why you're denying the demonstrable evidence that the dissemination of these theories, whether you agree with it or not, doesn't actually matter. The point is whether or not it harms people, and it demonstrably harms people. It demonstrably leads to radicalization and to violence. And even if it does, even in the cases when it doesn't, it leads to harassment. It leads to all sorts of things that makes YouTube and other platforms, if it were allowed, no longer platforms of free speech. You have to choose. You can't like it's like having the freedom of murderers and the freedom of non-murderers, or the freedom of drink drivers as well as the freedom of normal drivers. You have to choose. You either have the freedom for LGBT people and for ethnic minorities to function freely on YouTube, or you have the freedom of fascists. There's a choice, and there's never been a case in history where both can exist. As soon as these people take power, by the way, as soon as the people who spend decades advocating for free speech, as soon as they take power, they conveniently forget that they ever cared about free speech. Are you aware of Carl Schmitt, the Nazi philosopher who literally wrote down that who actually just wrote the words that free speech in liberal democracy in the Weimar was a perfect foot in the door for Nazi propaganda? His words were effectively, don't talk about Jews first, talk about free speech. Conveniently enough, the Nazis advocate for free speech all the time. I don't know if you've seen the picture of Hitler with the tape over his mouth, the very woe is me, very familiar sight that these people do. Yeah, as soon as they will pretend to care about free speech, they will use the sympathy of liberals, because liberals are very sympathetic to free speech, and often they won't notice. Again, maybe normal people like you, they'll appeal to the sympathy of people like you, and that's how they win.
Yeah, actually, the thing is, I have studied the alt-right. I've read their literature, and yeah, I basically know all their tactics. So none of that works on me. Like when they talk about free speech, for example, and stuff like that, they actually advise their members to lie about their beliefs so that they can advance their agenda.
Yeah,
I know, because people have to discuss these things. Like I try my best to tell people like what these guys are actually intending to do. I think conservatives should be really careful who they associate with. There are some white nationalists pretending to be conservatives. There may be, I'm not exactly sure. And there are communists, real communists, who want to overthrow the United States of America, who want to destroy our current system. No, there are communists in the left, and there are Nazis in the far right. So free speech should apply to them, and we should counter their narratives instead of like just sitting back and crying about it.
I mean, I know communists have a history of being not very nice when it comes to free speech. I mean, these days though, I don't really see why we are. Like we're quite good. We're pretty well behaved these days. I think the difference is that we when fascists
the communists are not at all well behaved, and you can see that with the Black Lives Matter riots. Black Lives Matter.
Are Black Lives Matter communists?
yeah, these identitarian groups are actually
Right.
communist in
Identitarian
their.
is not communist. They're different.
It actually is actually because Black Lives Matter. In
Wait,
the 60s,
most Americans support Black Lives Matter. Do you think most Americans are
they
communist?
don't know anything about the organization that they're supporting, and they don't know the fact that Black Lives Matter has partnered up with the Thousand Currents, which is a non-profit charity or something like that. And it's like I forgot what you call that kind of agreement. Yeah, the Thousand Currents actually does the fundraising and stuff for Black Lives Matter, and Thousand Current has.
You're off the point
No,
again.
listen. No, I'm not off the point because Thousand Current has Susan Rosenberg, who was a very famous far left terrorist, as advisor. And then there's one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter has partnered up with a pro CCP or youth organization.
This is not evidence
So,
that the BLM
yeah,
protesters
there's
are communist.
actually evidence, and Black Lives Matter is completely against the American system of free market capitalism, private property, etc., and they are against the police.
I feel like you're kind of making my free speech argument for me because you are a lot more right wing than you think you are.
No, I'm not a lot more right wing. I'm actually a centrist.
You've supported, yeah. Like, and again, I don't know when you were reading fascists talking about how you should lie about. No, sorry. Listen, when you said that you were. So when you said that you were reading about alt-right people saying you should lie about their beliefs, I don't know if you maybe missed the bit where they attempt to push the Overton window to call themselves the centrists so that they can legitimize their own existence.
Like big slippery slope. I had to study the alt-right.
It's not a slippery slope. That's what they do. They're doing it now.
I had to study literature as part of my course on counterterrorism.
Do you remember when Dave Rubin called like Stefan Molyneux a centrist? Like,
yeah, I don't know about that. I don't watch Dave Rubin. I think he's not worth listening to because he has nothing much to add to the conversation.
Dave Rubin is absolutely worth listening to, but maybe for a different reason.
Yeah, actually, I think I can agree with you that most of these mainstream conservatives like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, etc., are worthless, but for different reasons.
Ben Shapiro is also like, yeah. Were you not the one saying that Ben Shapiro wasn't a real conservative? Like, he's quite.
No, Ben Shapiro is a neo-conservative. The difference between the word conservative means that like there are two types of conservatives in the United States. There are paleo-conservatives and there are neo-conservatives. Paleo-conservatives are the type of conservatives that you would see in Europe, like in Poland, for example. You know, what you call as fascists. And,
okay, right. Yeah.
Neo-conservatives are actually liberals who worship the free market and want to maintain the American liberalism.
Okay, there's a lot of Overton window going on there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
There's a lot of right on these kind of things.
Right. Do you want to? Sorry. Hang on.
Yeah. Okay. So we can carry on.
Yeah. So okay. Like again, I think I don't know. I feel like a lot of this is just kind of depending on it's kind of proof in a way that we don't really enjoy equal rights to free speech because these kind of like fascist or conservative speakers, first of all, they get a lot more funding than people on the left do for obvious reasons. They're not going to get. Contrary to popular belief, most left-wingers on YouTube are just self-funded and funded by their patrons. They don't have the same massive industry complex. But again, I feel like you're kind of denying just the very obvious connection between these far-right the theories of people who have been banned off YouTube and what happens, and the harassment that their existence has been connected to, and the fact that they make the platform less of a free speech venue for marginalized groups. So I feel like you just have a strange sympathy towards people like Fuentes and Molyneux that you don't have for LGBT people.
I disagree with them on practically everything, and I don't like Molyneux at all. I think he's a real racist, not a race realist.
Yeah.
And Fuentes is a completely different phenomenon because he is completely out of the time. If he was born in the 60s, then he would be a normal average guy, but he's having that 60s mentality into this century.
But I'm talking about your sympathy, not like that you like them, just that your sympathy for their free speech rights is just seems a bit stronger because when they're the ones doing the harassing, then I don't know why you think that like LGBT people and marginalized groups should be the ones adapting themselves to this environment.
Free speech rights of LGBT communists and all these left-wingers should be preserved, as well as the free speech rights of these right-wingers.
And they can't be. They can't be with what the right-wingers
No,
do on
that's a
YouTube.
false dichotomy. That's a false dichotomy, because both sides can coexist together. And about the fans?
No, they can't, because one side wants the other side to stop existing.
Yeah, that's
these people
the
literally they support the abolition of gender identity laws. These people don't want these others to exist.
Not exactly. I think we can be like there are a lot of gay conservatives, mainstream conservatives, like I forgot his name. Yeah, like Dave Rubin is gay and he's a conservative.
Yeah, they're called grifters. I don't know if you agree with that,
yeah,
but they're called people who say things that they don't believe so they can get clout. But even Ben Shapiro, who I don't know, in your eyes seems a lot more central than I would say he is. When he sits in front of Dave Rubin and says, "I think homosexuality is sinful," maybe Ben Shapiro thinks that's harmless, and Dave Rubin obviously is willing to take it. But sinful, I don't know. How many steps are you removed from sinful to violence? Like, typically,
a lot. Because according to Jewish law, homosexuality is a crime, and Ben Shapiro is an Orthodox Jew. You cannot enforce your morality on a Orthodox Jew like that. Yeah, but Ben Shapiro is not calling for violence against Dave Rubin or any other gay conservative or any other gay person in particular, and he's not calling for violence against trans people.
Well, no. When you deliberately misgender and deny the identity of trans people, that is the context in which that's the context in which trans people are attacked. That is directly they are connected. Like, this is demonstrable as well.
The thing is, both sides have different definitions of what misgendering is. For the left, misgendering means when a trans person is called.
I don't care about your opinion on misgendering. It's just the fact that it leads to violence, and it does.
Not lead to violence. I completely disagree. And misgendering, what your definition of misgendering does not apply to the definition of misgendering that conservatives have, which is that a person who is biologically male becoming a female.
I don't care what you think about chromosomes. I don't give a shit.
That is what they think, and you can.
You are pivoting off every base here. So the fact is that you don't think the dissemination of propaganda and disinformation links to violence, even when it demonstrably does. All these right-wing terrorists use the same rhetoric. They bring up the same talking points. They tell you who they were radicalized by. It's up to you, really, whether or not you want to make the platform a better place for them or not.
Yeah, these people are mostly harmless. Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, etc. I don't think the real radicalization comes from other means. And
well, if you're Ben Shapiro fans are young, they'll probably start with Ben Shapiro, and then maybe Ben Shapiro will leave a bit of a gap when it comes to trans people, or when it comes to especially his views on black people, because Ben Shapiro will dismiss systemic racism, but then he won't find any explanation for why black people are the way they are. And sorry?
See, first of all, no conservative hates black people. We want what is best for the black people, and that the main issue with black communities right now is that the 70% single motherhood rate. And when you are raised by
and then if you're a curious fan, if you're a fan who's not satisfied with these kind of open-ended things, you would ask why, and then eventually Ben Shapiro can't answer your questions, and then you're a Ben Shapiro fan and you find yourself getting further into the pipeline of someone who is willing to answer why there's a single parent problem in black communities.
No, there's a single parent problem in black community because their culture. For example, the things that they idealize.
And where does culture from? And then you keep going, and then eventually you have someone who is someone who's a bit more curious and less easily satisfied with answers than you are, and then you'll eventually have someone who ends up in the race and IQ question. Then you'll end up with someone who thinks they're subhuman, and then you'll find someone a big enough group of people with a higher propensity to commit violence against black people. These are demonstrated. These are demonstrated across history. If you give platforms and you allow these people to disseminate their information in the way that they do, unfortunately, liberal societies are not adequately equipped to counter this. Liberal societies are notorious for producing large swathes of sexless, emasculated, depressed, dumb as fuck men who will fall for this propaganda, who are prime targets, who are catered for it. And if we let these propagandists and hate preachers remain, then that's what you get. You are just you're I don't know. I feel like at least you're honest in that you're just denying that you don't think that makes the world a worse place, but it does.
Not exactly. Liberal societies like the United States were the pinnacle of development. And the thing is, I'm a Hindu, and I believe that a society should be judged by the type of individual that it produces and not its economic gains or any of that stuff. I think
True.
that the United States of America was, back in the day, one of the best countries and one of the best societies because it was a moral, virtuous society that respected individual freedom, and also they did enough to advance as a collective. And yeah, liberal societies do not produce emasculated men. That is a result of completely different circumstances.
I think they generally have. I mean, well, yeah, economic turmoil. Yeah, they do. They always have.
The thing is, the main issue right now with America is that
That's not just me as well. That's also again like that's like Nazi philosophy is just liberalism is liberalism like or at the very least like liberal societies will sooner give way to fascism than they will to socialism.
Not exactly. Liberal societies give way to fascism when they lose religion, and the founding fathers
when they lose religion.
Benjamin Franklin said that freedom can only be entrusted to a virtuous people. When people lose their virtue and morality, they have a need for new masters.
I don't know. The Nazis were backed by the Catholic Church, so again, off the point.
Actually,
I think I've exhausted the end of my my argument. Yeah. Okay. So you'd rather YouTube had the same rules as Parler, 4chan, and BitChute, and that would produce a that's the essence of your argument, isn't it? That would produce a flourishing discourse and exchange of ideas, right?
I think the free marketplace of ideas has to be there so that these 4channels and these people on Parler, etc. These people on Parler, for example, most of them are normal conservative commentators who get banned for Twitter because they always end up violating their very loosely defined terms of service. And for example,
they're not that loosely defined. It's quite hard. It's not as easy to get banned off Twitter that people think. Like I mean, what?
I have a list of people. Like, okay, so for example, Twitter has not banned any account that is linked to Antifa, any account that is linked to...
How the fuck do you know that? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, because Antifa, there are like a lot of Antifa accounts that keep coming in.
I'm gonna need a source for that. Like what? Like I mean, Antifa again is very broad. Like there's not much about being Antifa that makes you. What I don't know what there is about Antifa that violates TOS, but like if
No, Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization that aims to advance their ideology with violence.
Okay, it's not even an organization, but I think we can leave it there. I very much appreciate your honesty. You can have a closing sentence, a brief sentence.
America than what the alt-righters, because most of these alt-righters who march with tiki torches and stuff, they're just a small minority. Like it's a high school reunion size small, like 600 people. One of the biggest alt-right reunions or something like that. They only gathered 600 people, in all honesty. And what happened in Charlottesville, for example?
You know, I'm like an Antifa, or I have been an Antifa person. Like, well, unless it's a terror organization, in which case I'm not. But yeah, you know, I've done like...
Organization.
So as an Antifa activist, what do you think I've done then? Like, say if I just say that I've done Antifa shit before, what do you think that means?
Antifa showing up to places, attacking people who disagree with them, who want to listen to someone speak. It is actually an act of terrorism, which is the use of violence to advance political aims. So yeah, Antifa is a terrorist organization, and there is no doubt about it.
I mean, when I was doing Antifa stuff, it was generally just turn up and stand on the other side with signs and just make a loud noise. But
yeah, but okay, that's completely fine. But
well, that's Antifa. That's just as Antifa as apparently going in and assaulting people who disagree. Why do you keep using this language? People who disagree with you. It's not people who the fact that they disagree is not the operative term there. It's like that's like saying you're attacking these people because they are other human beings. It's not the fact you're not attacking them because they're other human beings. It's because
of the
particular.
You perceive them to be fascist, and anyone who disagrees with you is a fascist.
I don't think anyone who disagrees with me is a fascist. No, not many people are like, I don't know who the fuck you've been talking to that thinks that.
That is the language of the left. I don't know what to say.
Do you know the left disagrees with each other all the time? Do you think the left thinks each other?
I know the left disagrees with each other on who is more left, but listen.
Maybe the people we call fascists are just because they're fascist, because they use fascist ideas and they overlap. They synchronize their ideas with fascist ideas.
By your logic, the left can be perceived as fascist because they want to raise taxes. Whenever
no, that's not that. No, that doesn't fall under raising taxes. Doesn't fall under a definition of fascism.
What's your standard? Because first of all, when you label people like Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, etc., like these harmless people as fascists, then
I can explain. I can go through the entire list of why those people are fascist.
Okay, you can go on.
Shall we go? Shall we use the 14 points of fascism, the famous? First of all, with Steven Crowder, his complete disdain for migrant and refugee groups, the fact that he's basically been racist against every group that there is, his targeted discrimination of LGBT people, the ultra-nationalism, the general, I suppose you could say, well, appeal to social frustration. Machismo, obviously, Ben Shapiro, very small guy, is completely built his aesthetic on destroying people. It's not his fault. He can only do it to 10-year-olds. Appeals to obsession with plot. The left is destroying the media. Yeah, these people completely overlap with the ideas of fascism. Rejection of modernity, cult of tradition, appeal to modern family values. Yeah, this is all
fascism. The worship of the state. Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, they want lesser government interference in people's lives. And
okay,
public life.
We're off the point now. We're off the point now. Last sentence, and you can go.
Yeah, I have nothing much to say. I think the debate will speak for itself. It was a really good one. I'm glad that we could have this discussion.
Yep, I appreciate your honesty, my friend. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. What am I doing?
Hey, അമ്മ ചായ ഉണ്ടാ തീർന്ന കഴിഞ്ഞു
Okay. Holy shit. That was fun. If a bit fucking... I don't know. I think I could have done better in some places. I didn't realize I was having to debunk. And I don't know, in a discussion with someone who was coming off as self-presenting as a moderate, I think he appeared in chat at first saying that he was a fucking Joe Rogan fan. So I expected someone, I should stop expecting people who call themselves centrist to actually be centrist. That's definitely one thing. But yeah, I didn't realize I had to challenge every single far-right talking point in existence. But yeah, amazing. 220 people watching that. Cool. Did I think Mods said that there was someone else who wanted to talk. I have no idea if I'm up to that. Yeah, pivot. Yeah, lots of pivots. Yeah. Big pivoting. It's a shame because I'm usually quite well versed on dealing with great replacement theorists and all those kind of things, but not with this headache, my friend. Oh. No, I can't talk about Poland. I haven't spoken about Poland in a very long time. Fuck. Zetmo, if you want to hang around in the channel, you can set up something for next week. I'll learn everything there is to know about Poland. Holy shit. Right. I'll probably hang around for a little bit longer. Right now I'm just going to get some more water and you guys can... Lexi's in... Oh my god, I noticed you, Lexi, hanging around in there. My good Twitter friend. Right. I'm getting some fucking water. Talk amongst yourselves, etc. Ooh. Okay, what's going on here? DMs. Now, I'm drawing a fucking line. YouTube chat is looking kind of disgusting. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. My head is in a lot of pain right now. Oh, I'm definitely fucking off, but my God, thank you everyone for hanging around. I promise the next stream won't be like only an hour or 2 hours. We'll get some more entertainment out of it. Oh shit. Okay. Unless I maybe have anything to say to chat. I'm just not doing another debate. Fucking hell. Yeah, you can ping me if you want now. It's okay. Ugh. I think one thing I would have liked to say there is when it comes to free speech, obviously, when it comes to rights to free speech in a public space, a liberal society is always going to have an imbalance there because certain ideas can earn you funding from multi-millionaire companies and multi-billionaire and multinationals, and some of them can't. So and that's why the left will never have an equal right to platforms in the society as the right will. And the right, even though apparently Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and Stephen Crowder are apparently just centrists, but they just so happen to be excellent foots in the door for fascists, which is why fascists might not have that much funding, the proper ones anyway. But the ideas that lead to them will always have more funding. So maybe I could have brought that up, but then I don't know, that's more of an anti-capitalist argument than a free speech argument. Are we all okay in there? Are we happy? Can I go now? And I'll probably join the voice chat afterwards. That'll be fun. If you want to, if anyone does want to chat later, they can come into the Discord. The Discord link is in the bottom of the YouTube video description. So go there, say hi, etc. All right. We're ending there.